All right, here we go. Can you hear me well? Welcome to the stream. I am Zach Holden, and this is Thankstreaming 2020. Let's pretend we're not crazy for a little while, at least here. I welcome you. If you're new to what I do on this part of my channel, my live streams, basically every other week I'll do a live stream, and generally I like to talk. Like 1 week I'll talk, and then the next week, or the next 2 weeks later, I'll do a concert. So talking and concerts, and you've dropped in on talking. So can you hear me at all? I feel like I can't be heard. How about that? We're turning that puppy up. Yeah. There we go. Hello, I am Zach Holden. And yeah, we've got some things to talk about. This should be pretty quick live stream today. It is Black Friday. Thanksstreaming. Thanksgiving was yesterday. And I don't have a ton to talk about besides, the state of the world. There are some interesting movies that just came out. We can talk about that. One of them is The Happiest Season. I hear that some people are having experiences with that movie. The reason I know it is because the fabulous Anna Gasteyer is in it, and the song Nothing Rhymes with Christmas that I helped produce in a very, very small amount of help. But I was there grabbing coffee for the people who recorded that song. And that was a very, very cool experience that I got to be a part of. A very, very cool crew. And you should go listen to the song. I haven't seen the movie yet. I think my roommates are watching it right now. So sorry for the lag. And yeah, it's pretty good. Question mark. I have some friends who think it's maybe disappointing, and I have some friends who think that it's perfectly fine. So you tell me in the comments below whether or not you think Happiest Season is good, and tell me your thoughts on Nothing Rhymes with Christmas. Nothing rhymes with Christmas. Every poet knows. Listen for that in the movie and see. That's pretty cool, I think. Anyway, so that's one of the movies that's out there right now that I think maybe we should check out as a group. And the other movie that I heard came out was Hillbilly Elegy. Which I've had some conversations about too. I again haven't watched it. I don't have Netflix. I don't have Amazon Prime or anything like that. So, I can only talk about what I've been hearing, which is probably the worst source of information. It sounds like it's a contentious movie as well. I guess should I encourage you to see it? Again, let the comments decide. But I definitely think. From what I've heard, this is my understanding of the film, and I won't get into it deeply because it doesn't need anything more from me. But, a bunch of famous people went and made this guy's memoir into a movie, and it got the Hollywood treatment, so you take it as you will. If you've read the book, there was a book. And it's about a young man who grew up in the Rust Belt and had some... his family had some issues, and they all had their ways of coping with that. And ultimately, the takeaway I'm getting, beyond some of the contentiousness of it, is that it's the story about white poverty, mental health, addiction, this sense of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, is the general sense I'm getting from the few things I've read and seen. And all I want to point out from what I'm getting, from the little that I know about it, is that it seems like this is kind of a natural progression of what we've seen. There's some people who are concerned that it humanizes Trumpers, and there's other people that are saying that Trumpers are human, and this is one experience, although could be dramatized. I mean, it's a Hollywood film. But my takeaway is truly that this is a natural progression to see this type of art, whether we like it or not, reflecting the experience of a community that is having hardships. And I will watch the movie and come back and tell you what I think, probably. But I have a tough time thinking that I'm going to change my mind from this one simple idea, which is no matter what the specifics of the story are, and it's important to know how to tell the story and be accurate with the narratives that we're telling in order to help each other understand the world. Poverty is the problem, and we can disagree about how to solve it, but I think if we miss the point if we don't decide to come together on an answer for things like healthcare and the poverty line and equity within all socioeconomic classes and racial disparities and all these things that separate us on a national level with the small labels that we're so concerned about, rightfully so, because they separate us from living a life free from tremendous amounts of struggle. And my plea is to anyone who watches the movie and has an opinion or a critique, takes it one step further, and decides to take a more severe look at the art that they're consuming beyond this and pushes to take it to that next step. If you have an opinion, develop a critique that can be based in solid logic and understanding. And then if you have a critique, push further into trying to understand solutions to that problem that you're seeing. And hopefully once we start seeing solutions for each other, we can work together to implement some action that changes that. And specifically for this movie, I'm thinking it's going to be a poverty and healthcare situation, which benefits us all in the long run. So if this movie is what I think it is, which is me just blustering around saying what I think might be coming my way, it could be just another reason to say, hey, we should take care of each other and we should do it in a way that kind of undermines what we've been doing before, because it doesn't seem like it's been working that good. But you decide. So those are the two movies I'm hearing about, and that's nice. I've been working on some aspirations for everyone, and one of the things that I've been thinking about this week is, if you don't travel into the dark, who will? And take that as you will, because everyone has the burden that they bear. And ultimately, it's your burden, it's your responsibility, it's your opportunity to walk forward into the world and bring some courage to your life. That seems a little prescriptive, so I'll step it back and say that you do have a light inside you, whatever that light is, and you can use it to step forward and do good in the world. And that brings us to Thanksgiving, because when you can find something that you're thankful for within yourself and cultivate that experience, perhaps you can take that and bring it into the real world. I like to think about when I make music, what I'm really doing. I spend a lot of time just noodling around, not really doing anything, and I hear that that's a struggle for people. It's not a struggle for me, one, because in the words of Julia Cameron, it's filling the well. That is to say, I'm going and playing and developing my joy by, kind of mining for the love that I have, the things that I can be grateful for, this talent that I can pursue, and keep that in a reservoir to share with the world. Because really, what are you withholding from the world, right? The love that you're seeking, what are you withholding? Where can you grow in order to create that symbiotic experience in life that says, hey, if I give, I will return. But more importantly, if I give, I am human and creative and fulfilled, and it doesn't matter what comes back to me because I've given the love that I've created for myself. I think that's pretty noble, and I think that would be a more interesting take on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is for a lot of people about family, and I haven't spent Thanksgiving with my family for a while, so maybe I'm biased or a bit odd, but I'm also, I take this holiday with a grain of salt. It was made in 1863, I believe, formalized by Abraham Lincoln, and built on the story about Native American and Pilgrim relations that I think, as many of us are coming to know, myself included, is a flawed story. At least it's very I was just reading about some of the true circumstances around, or at least the historically uh, accurate versions of what happened, and I won't recount them offhand. I just suggest that we all go and try to find some historical documentation, which perhaps I can find a link and present it somewhere. If I had a producer, someday I would. But I don't know. I would encourage people to take Thanksgiving as a moment to, of course, be with your family and give thanks for that, and also remember that the where we are is built on a kind of a structure of taking, which is sad. So it's cognitively dissonant to have to say thank you for this world that I've been given that I know was taken. I grew up at a summer camp with a lot of Native American iconography, and I learned a lot about the Cherokee Nation, especially. I was very interested in it at a time, and I've tried to learn very deeply about a lot of their practices, and it's led me to things like Wicca and Western paganism and shamanism, and this, all my studies of intersectional religion and comparative religion, and more recently the actual facts rather than just the culture, but the historical consequences of our retaining of the Native American land. And it's troubling to a degree to feel that our entire lives are somehow tied into the colonization of America, which, I mean, some people would they wouldn't bat an eye at. They'd find me a bit too pretentious to feel some sort of guilt, and I wouldn't say guilt. I do try to avoid that, the idea that there's some guilt there, that this like a paralytic shame exists, and that someone else has to help me fix this or whatever. I don't really feel that way. I feel like every day we have the opportunity to show that we understand the history that we come from, and that we can repair the history that we've built. Again, I don't have a lot of shame from my life. I don't feel personal shame, but I do identify the history of my world and the very logical steps from point A to point B of how I got here. It's a very complex web of things that are positive and negative in historical context, and I acknowledge that, and also understand my agency in rectifying a lot of those things. I'm got the app. I have the maps. I've looked at the maps of all the nations that lived where I have lived, and kind of come to know some of those names, and learned some Ojibwa. I've learned Ojibwa words and things like that. I just think that if we're going to give thanks for the people in our lives and the things that we have, we can also acknowledge that there is some blind spot in our history that we can rectify and ultimately become okay with. It's a journey that I'm on most of my life, whether that's religion or our history, or just thinking about science and facts and other high-minded ivory tower things. We are capable of fixing our own problems. And this is, again, a thing like hearkening back to the movies. I really do have a belief that if we can take the art that presented to us and make some acknowledgments about the real life implications of these stories, and then turn our efforts from the fantasy to the reality. I see this story as an accurate representation of something in our lives, or at least a manifestation of the way that we are feeling the struggle that we're experiencing, whatever story that may be. For this instance, I'm thinking of Hillbilly Elegy, but in that instance, we can clearly see a problem. And if we bend our focus outward to helping solve that problem, perhaps the art that we see are so uncomfortably, maybe it changes form. But to each his own. Oh boy. I just keep talking, don't I? I didn't prep for this one really well, I'll admit. So I'm trying to think of things that have come up this week. Thanksgiving, Black Friday. Hey, I hope you didn't, like, fall into the trap of Black Friday and, like, spend a bunch of money in a pandemic. But if you did, that's okay. I'm sure you did it with the best intentions, and that's all right. We're allowed to live the lives that we wish to live. So I've been reading the new Jim Crow, which I know I'm probably behind the eight ball on because that was written in, 2010? But I just want to point out that it's worth a read. I know there are definitely people watching this who will say, "Oh, geez, why watch that or why read that when one, I mean, statistically it's a little behind now." Although there is an updated foreword, which is quite lengthy and a good context for what's happened now. Many of my friends will say, well, if you know all the things, if you get the gist, there's a lot of it that you don't need to read. And I say sure, but also there's so many moments where you can get some clear idea about some of the more insidious is the word that's coming to mind, but I think that's a little nefarious. But some of these just layered events that have created another crappy situation in the world, which is, I mean, an understatement for how we treat racial disparity within policing. And I suggest you go read it because it's wonderfully incisive about the court cases specifically that kind of create this tapestry of an invisible race-based discretion. And I don't say that lightly. I find this struggle, and maybe someone's going to feel outed by this because I do come from a relatively rural and lower to middle class area. But I've often confronted this idea that it's hard to see past explicit racism. And that's to say, like, it's very, very difficult to for some, including myself at times, to identify racial patterns, racial disparity when it's not explicit. I don't say a racist thing. I don't mean a racist intent, but I just am the way I am. I've lived my life, and I've seen these things. Anecdotally, they've been, reinforced through propaganda, personal experience, these, political campaigns, all these things that make our experience of what race is and what other race, what racism is and what other races are like. It's compounded over years and years and years. And we've gotten far enough down the line that racism in its explicit form has become relatively invisible. I mean, it certainly exists in a lot of different places. I don't need to recount those to you. But the way that systemic racism is popping its head up in a little bit easier way to see now is pretty compelling. And that's why I suggest reading the book, especially if you're a person who feels like if something isn't explicitly racist, if everything really is equal and fair. If you believe that everything is equal and fair, then read the book. And if you still think everything's equal and fair, then, I'll bring you on the channel and we'll talk more. But the little bubble that I'll bring you in on my thoughts on this book and what it's bringing me is a very specific sense of the courts, prosecutors, lawyers, judges, and police, their relationship with how racial disparity becomes codified within our laws. Because after the civil rights movement, there was an idea within, this is my understanding. Historically, there's an idea that we've triumphed over racism into kind of a colorblind experience, and that the things that happen to people of color now, that is because of something they've done wrong, right? This is an individual mandate beyond this. We've cured the racial overtones have been negated from all of our laws, the Jim Crow laws, and discrimination no longer exists because it's no longer explicit. And simple court cases like determining how police officers can, or determining how much discretion a police officer has in creating an opportunity to search or seize from motorists. That's a big one in the book. Something that I'm focusing on right now because that's where I'm reading. And this idea that over time, lots of judgment has been made regarding the pretty widespread discretion that police officers have in how and when they decide to search a person and intimidate them into that. And a lot of it has to do with a history of targeting people based on race. And it comes from this cyclical nature of what we have as information. And you see this a lot, and it becomes a trap of systemic racism, this idea that people identified a problem, the war on drugs, and then articulated where that problem might be, began attacking it there without proper statistical evidence that it truly was being helpful or that there was a distinct problem in that area compared to anywhere else. And then that funnel slowly became a way to justify its own existence. Specifically the war on drugs, this idea that communities that were thought of as more drug-related or more dangerous happened to be places that had already been set up as places where black and brown people were living. And after a series of roundups and funding, and then creating more funding for people who had more arrests, and then there were more arrests, so it seemed like there were more people of color who were doing more bad things. But time and time again, as studies show, it seems to be that is not the case. There is a general equity within drug users beyond racial race, and we have yet to rectify that, and now it's become a self-propagandizing cycle where we believe that individuals have an equal have a fair way out of that system, when it's pretty permeative. And I know I'm just speaking vaguely, but I'm just trying to get you interested in the idea of perhaps it's not really that fair, even if it looks fair on paper, and we can look at that in some other alternative ways. I mean, check out the book, and maybe Black Lives Matter will make a little bit more sense to you. But other happy things that I want to talk about are music. I'm writing music. I'm writing some new music. I'm trying to do more original songs, so I hope you guys enjoy that. I got some comedy ideas coming up. Broke, Frustrated, and Anxious is kind of what I'm calling these ideas, and it's just about being broke, frustrated, and anxious, and young and funny in the city. As my friends would say, they can pay me to not be funny, or they shouldn't pay me to be funny. I don't know anymore. But so those songs are coming up. I'm also writing some more aspirations down as I kind of share them with you. I'm hoping to get a publication out of that. And well, maybe I'll give you a taste of this another idea I have, and it's this idea of trying to come up with ways that we can see outside of the obvious on life choices, and it's a way of looking. I'm trying to come up with a way to help people look at the world alternatively, to take things like college and career and capitalism and where to live and who to spend your time with and how to network and how to be a human in the world beyond what we've been told that we should do. And not in like a really like crazy sense. I'm not telling everybody get in a van and go live down by the river and save money, don't go to college, all that stuff. But I really do think that there is some untapped potential in us in America to say, why do we do these things that are so like it's self-indulgent, but self-hating. There's so many things that we do that hurt us because of some obligation that we've created for ourselves. And I just think that's lame. I think about my student debt and how I wish I didn't have my student debt. And so I'm thinking about all these different ways that we could live alternatively, that there's a lot of arguments about student debt, right? And I for one just want to get rid of it. I don't really care how I want to and I keep my ears open because I know some things are radical and some things are not so radical, and I try to stay on top of it, but I got to pay my bills, so I'm really just focused on that. But part of me always wishes that I hadn't taken on that student debt. And so I've really thought about, for someone younger than me, if you want a path that doesn't involve crap tons of debt, there are certainly ways to do that. And people on the right and the left have been talking about that forever, but this is just my offering to say, hey, here's how we can start thinking about college and other things. But I guess let's just stay on the higher education path for a second, in a way that says, let's set that aside. This idea that, like, you have to go to college, you have to go to the best college, and you have to go to the place where the job is, and then you be the best, and yada, 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 all the things you already know about the American dream. And let's say, can we achieve that within the world that we have now in a way that slowly breaks that pattern? Because that's not really a healthy pattern, right? That's a speculative pattern, this idea that we'll take a bunch of money and take loans and then pay them off over our lives, and hopefully, we'll make it, and we won't worry about it. That's how I entered. That's totally how I entered into college, saying, oh, wow, you know what? I'm just going to take on as much debt as I need to because I'm going into the really good school, and that'll be enough, right? I'll just, I'll get a good job after I go to the good school. I would say that I've done some really cool things because of school, but I wouldn't say that they paid the bills. And I think I could have done those cool things without school. Now, that's a big question mark for a lot of people, and I totally get it if it's a scary question. It's a scary question to ask myself. I don't know if I know shit tons of things would be different. I'm sorry for cursing. I know a lot of things would be different, but I do wonder if I would have really sat down and thought about what you actually get out of school. Things like, is there a teacher you really want to work with? Like a lesson you want to learn? Are the people there really your people that you can work with and get an opportunity to do something? Does that school really have a network of people, really have a legacy that would get you somewhere where you could take care, grasp that opportunity? And does it have something that you wouldn't be able to do anywhere else, right? That's what you're looking at with higher education. You're looking at these really valuable things that are totally worth it for a lot of people. Is it $100,000 of debt worth it for me? I have to say yes, because no regrets, right? But there is a question mark there. Because we could come up with a lot of different alternatives. I mean, think about all the different ways that you can get all those things. You just need to find a great teacher. Think about YouTube. How many great teachers are on YouTube that you wouldn't need you wouldn't need to spend any money to interact with a great teacher. Now, if you really want the experience of a teacher, you might have to find that teacher and go somewhere, and that's a different decision you have to make. But step one, teachers are everywhere. And you got to be incisive about what teacher you want, and you can be without spending $100,000. Second thing is the people who care about what you care about are everywhere. The idea is with higher education is that the people who think like you are going to go to the schools where you want to go, right? Like, you'll go to the school with the people who you see them there, they're doing work that you want to do. It's kind of this legacy of the people that you want to be like. You go to the school that they went to because you assume that others will congregate in that area. With the internet, that's not a requisite anymore. I don't think it is. We can do better. And what that means for us is that you got to look for your community. And if that's at a college, awesome. Go to that college. If you can afford that college, great. But if that's somewhere else, awesome. That's so much awesome. That's so much awesome. That is so much awesome. Liberal arts. So I'm saying that that's available to you in another world. And I'm not saying don't go to college. Don't even say that. What I'm saying is go to the college that makes more sense than just the things that you've been taught to think about it. Which is generally what I'll talk about next, which is legacy and networking opportunities, which you can get in so many other ways. Think about just for me, it'd be like going to any acting school anywhere. Somebody knows somebody. You go somewhere, you do a thing, you make it yourself. That's really hard. That's also a little bit privileged because it is hard to do things by yourself if you don't have any money. And living a life outside of school, like just trying to live life and then trying to make stuff happen, that's equally tough. I mean, I'm there right now. So it's not really easier, but it is without the burden of all that debt. So it's an option. And what I'm asking in this series, I guess, that I'm going to start talking about is that, can we look at things as more options? Are we really looking at all the options? Because I feel like I was not presented every option as legitimate. And they are legitimate. Be creative. If you're an artist and you want to have an artist life, be creative now with the decision making. Because it matters. It really does. Because you're not going to end up like me, sitting like feeling regret for doing cool things because I can't pay my bills. Bootstrap theory, I do that too. I work a full-time job. And then I work other freelance jobs doing all the other interesting things that I've learned and hoping that they work out, and producing freelance and web designing and like learning all those other skills, none of which I really learned in school. I learned them when I was at school, and I applied them in opportunities I got at school. But I could have learned those anywhere. It just happened to be that I was there when I was learning them. And that's all part of the rigmarole that you're walking into if you're going to be a young artist, is that there is more than one way to cut an onion. But you should probably learn all the ways to cut the onion before you decide to chop it. They'll probably all make you cry because it's life. Oh, man. So that's something I hope we can look forward to, is this idea that there is content. There is potential for a series here that I will hopefully share with you, with ideas about, if you're young, if you're like me, if you're looking for alternative ways to beat the system, it's out there. Your non-ec, this is for those theater people out there. Look, EMC is the new non-ec. You got to bust your bum to do it the way that it's built now, if at all, considering COVID. We have ways. There will be ways that we can create to get around that, and I will share those with you another time. All right. It's been about a half an hour, and I need to get back to relaxing on this long weekend because, I've worked, and I'm sure you have too. So stop listening to this old fart talk about stuff he doesn't know anything about, and get back to eating that leftover turkey, because that's the good stuff. So have a great day. Bring joy, knowledge, and relief to everybody you know. Share your love, and I'll see you next time.